The fourth installment of J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter stories has arrived. It is the single largest phenomenon in publishing history. With 3.8 million books printed in the United States and 3 million more on the way, there has never been a bigger first printing of a book ever. The first 3 novels in Rowling's series have sold 35 million copies. They have been translated in 35 languages. And we're talking about children's books. The series is so successful that the New York Times will create a separate bestseller list for children's fiction to accommodate Harry Potter. Joining me now to talk about Harry Mania, Janet Maslin, who reviewed the book for the New York Times, Malcolm Jones, general editor at Newsweek magazine, who interviewed J.K. Rowling in June, and Mark Gleason, publisher of Book magazine. I am pleased to have all of them here. Since you have interviewed her, just explain this phenomenon to me.
That's a small chore.
Yeah.
Well, I think it comes in 2 parts. I mean, the first part is the hard part, which is that it is hard to understand why a book,
right,
has this kind of following. It's popular. It's very good. I think it is a very good book. The second half of the phenomenon is that it is just, at this point, a phenomenon like Pokemon or something that generates its own kind of interest. It's like the kid down the street has it. My sister has it. I want it.
It has that, but it seems to have extended itself beyond a season.
Yes, and I mean, if it weren't good, I do not think that would happen. I mean, it's with a lot of these sort of like created phenomenons, and Pokemon's a good example. The closer you look at it, the more it evaporates. Whereas with this, the more you look at it, the more you see.
What makes it good?
She's very smart. She has a very rich imagination. These books are really. They create this whole world that just sucks you in. They're really entertaining. They're like the Oz books in a way, that you just suddenly think you're in another place, and it's all very well detailed. And there are lots of funny, interesting things going on all the time, and we are sorry when you're done reading them. That's
you
the
really
bottom
are.
line.
You, an adult, were sorry when you finished reading these books.
You know what? They're not children's books. It's nice that everybody wants to get them off the main bestseller list, because I think that'll make it easier for the other bestsellers. But I think if you were an adult and you took that big new one to the beach this summer, you would not be disappointed that you weren't reading a standard.
Well, do you think it's fair to J.K. Rowling to take it off the...
I think she doesn't really have much to worry about. I think it's fine for her. Sure, why not?
If you have not been living on this planet and you don't know what Harry Potter is about, what's the story about?
The story is about a young boy who is sort of straddling 2 worlds, the real world of people and adults, and this magical world where everybody's got magical talent. And I haven't read the new book, but there's this, as Janet said, there's this whole world of magical wizardry that Harry is spending most of his time in. And I think the strength of the book, one of the strengths, is that in pop culture nowadays, there's very little fantasy. There's very little good fantasy. Everything's about being more realistic. And Toy Story, for example, is here's a cartoon that was made to look ever more realistic. Here's somebody who's actually done fantasy and done it very well. And I think in this world, in this time, there's a real hunger for that. That people are latching onto.
That's absolutely true, but also think of what the reality, so-called, that we're getting in all the other media is like. There's just terrible stuff going on in television this summer. There's not a whole lot happening in the movies. Pop culture is very flat.
There's terrible stuff going on in television this summer.
Not here, but
you mean the Survivors
Survivor,
and
Big Brother,
and
that great
Big Brother and
craze for all that. It's
and
interesting.
Millionaire and all that.
Well, yeah, I actually like Millionaire, but there's really kind of no there with a lot of this stuff, and this is just this very enveloping. Pleasing experience. It's just fun to read, and the thing about the magic in it is the magic is just taken as a given. It's just matter of fact that all these characters can do these amazing things, and they're not even surprised when the mother of Harry's friend is cooking in this book, and she just points her magic wand at the potatoes, and the potatoes are peeled. It's just things like that throughout the book.
But lots of people writing fantasy stories. Is it the difference in these what?
She's very witty.
Well, she's witty.
Right, she's very witty, and I went around for a long time asking people this question, and my specific question was, why do the English write fantasy better than almost anybody else?
Right.
And the best answer I've heard so far is that they don't look at it as a tradition. They make it up from scratch every time they do it. And at the same time, they've got all the stuff on the shelf, like castles and wizards and Merlin and all that stuff going for them if they need it. And she had a very interesting thing to say when I interviewed her. She said, it's because we were invaded by so many people. We have all these folklores tumbling over one another, and, you know, they enrich everything that we do, which I think is very true.
What's she like?
She's very, I liked her a lot. She's funny, she's very level-headed, she's very unpretentious. She has a very good sense of humor about herself. At the same time, she knows exactly what she wants to do with these books. You know, she knows how they started and where she wants to go with them, all of that. And at the same time, she has, you know, her perspective is so good. I mean, she has a small daughter, and she says, you know, like, my daughter, then these books, and then the rest of life can take care of itself.
How did she come to write them?
She's been writing, you know, to hear her tell it all her life, since she was 6 years old, and trying one thing and another. The story that she tells is that 10 years or so ago, she was on a train that was stalled on the track between Manchester and London. She was daydreaming, and this little boy popped into her head, and it was Harry Potter, and complete with the scar on his forehead, and he knows he's a wizard, or he is a wizard, but he doesn't know it, and he doesn't know how he's a wizard. Now, why is that? And
he gets sort of embarrassed when people are always calling attention to the fact that he's a wizard.
Right.
He's shy.
And she said that was the only gift she had like that. She had to work out everything else for herself. But
the gift she had was that
he literally appeared to her like that. That no other character came like that, she said. But he appeared to her fully formed. All she had to do was just copy him down.
Yeah. Adults and children read these books?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Right, absolutely.
Maybe more adults than children.
These books are
Really?
very, very visual, which is a lot of what works for them also. I mean, she has the most amazing visual imagination. She's got a thing in here, the kind of main plot device is that there's a competition between Hogwarts, Harry's wizard school, and 2 other wizard schools. And when the delegations arrive from the other schools, there's one that's full of beautiful French girls that arrives in a blue carriage the size of a house, which is described. And then all of a sudden from inside the lake, where that's right near Hogwarts, up comes the mast of this giant ship that's got the other delegation from a place called Durmstrang, I think. I mean, it's all. Try to imagine that in your mind, and you see a scene better than you'd see in most movies, I think.
Not everybody loves them. Take a look at this clip from my show last night.
Well, to some degree, of course, one would like to feel that they ought to follow their own nature, but these days. That leads to all kinds of difficulties. One cannot be happy about the 35 million copies of Harry Potter. I had a piece in today's Wall Street Journal.
I saw the editorial, yes, the op-ed piece.
Yes,
We can't be happy about that?
No, I think that's not reading, because there's nothing there to be read. They're just an endless string of cliches. I cannot think that does anyone any good. I mean, people tell me, well, at least the child is reading, to which my answer is no, the child isn't reading. That's not The Wind in the Willows. That's not Through the Looking Glass. That's not Charlotte's Web by E.B. White or James Thurber's The 13 Clocks. That's not really children's literature. It's really just slop. And I do not think it does anyone any good at all.
Okay, but then what are you saying? I mean, are millions and millions and millions of people wrong?
I'm afraid so.
You know, and why do you think they believe and desperately want to get this book? I mean, they're being overwhelmed at Amazon.com.
Yes, I know, Charles. But a lot of that is fashion, of course. You know, a lot of that is...
You read it because somebody else is reading it, or you read it because you think it's a thing to do, or you read it because it's the current thing?
It is the current thing, yes. It is a fashion. It's a period piece, a whole series of period pieces.
What do you say to my friend, Mr. Bloom?
He doesn't know
Professor Bloom.
He doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm glad he calls you Charles, but that's the most interesting thing he had to say there. I'm sorry. He's just dead wrong.
He's dead wrong?
He's dead wrong.
He's dead wrong in the comparisons that he makes? That
This is not The Wind in the Willows, but it is not chopped liver either.
So, but you're not saying this is not great literature. This is what? Popular literature.
Nobody said it's great literature.
Okay, what are you saying then? You're just saying that it's a nice little story that everybody should read?
It's a great mass phenomenon. It's Star Wars. It's Star Wars as a book.
Yeah,
That's what it is.
But you don't review mass phenomenon. You review books.
why can't a book be a mass phenomenon? Why can't it capture everyone's imagination because it's interesting, because it's lively and interesting?
And why can't a mass phenomenon be good?
Yeah.
I mean, it's, who's to say that Stephen
35
King...
million people can't be wrong.
No,
that's
35 million people can be wrong.
That's outrageous what he had to say. I'm sorry.
I agree.
That's just reflexive snobbery. It's from somebody who doesn't sound like... Yes, there's one in every crowd. I'm sorry. Well, that just makes me angry. Because
why does it make you angry? He's got an opinion like you do. You write your opinion in the New York Times, and you love the book. He gets on a television show.
Well...
And he says, I didn't like the book because I thought it was...
No. He doesn't say... He says that people are fools to like this slop. He doesn't just say, I didn't like it.
Okay, he's saying a thinking person shouldn't read this book. Yeah. It's not doing anybody any good. But books start out as stories. Great literature, and call it what you will, commercial literature. The good ones all have something in common, and that is a great story. Yeah. And this definitely has that.
I asked him after this about Dickens and how Dickens was received
line
at the
for
time.
line, I would be happy to pull 20 lines out of this book that are as witty and interesting as anything in Wind of the Willows, and 20 imaginary characters or devices that would stand the test of time, too. I'm not saying that everything here is written in gold, but the great counterintuitive thing about this is that it really is much better than you would expect any kind of big bestseller to be. We know what most bestsellers are like. We know, really. I mean, you know that usually when something gets that successful and everybody on the block wants it, it's terrible.
It's better than John Grisham, you think?
John Grisham's last book? Yeah, much better. Yeah. Much better.
I think it's better. It's better than Grisham is writing formula novels where the characters change, the stories change, but the formula is the same. Here she's created this world that is fully formed, and she had the idea for all 7 books as it's supposed to be in her head at the start. It's
so
formula, but it's one big story more than it's a repeating formula.
Right. And the other thing, too, is that I think it's very... children's literature is a strange area because every really great thing in children's literature, I think, sort of, again, it redefines the genre. I mean, Wind in the Willows and Charlotte's Web don't have that much to do with one another, or with Treasure Island, And these books do something, it's... What these books, do well, they do very, very well. I mean, they are very visual. She has an extraordinary imagination when it comes to creating new characters. And just on names alone, she has a wonderful way with names. Yeah. And a lot of the things are there for children to get or not, or for adults, or to get when they're adults. I mean, there's a character that's a caretaker, and his name is Argus Filch. And, she says... I don't expect children to know who Argus is, but when they grow up and they find out that he's this, mythological character who has eyes all over his body, it's going to, the penny's going to drop,
Someone has to play a little bit of, I hate the word devil's advocate, but I'm just raising these questions.
I will about what's going to happen next with this.
Okay, go ahead.
I worry that we're enjoying the twilight of the innocence of this whole thing, because once the lunchboxes come along, and once the movie goes into production, and once it gets to be a kind of toy tie-in merchandising phenomenon, I hope they don't spoil it for people who
Why will that spoil it?
I don't think anyone can watch the lightsaber duel in Star Wars the same way after they've played with a lightsaber, at home.
Or a lightsaber they've bought.
Honestly.
If they had made their own lightsaber, that would be different. And that's what kids have done here so far. Is they've made their own capes, they've made their own toys based on their games. They haven't gone to the store and just purchased it.
You must see what's in your own head with this. There's no guideline. You have to kind of envision this whole thing as you're going along. There's no actor that you can connect with Harry Potter, and no
Boy, there will be.
Images.
That's all.
But right now there isn't.
Is this a surefire movie winner or not?
Not.
Not?
Not. You heard it here first.
Why?
Because this is a hard act to follow. The really great movie adaptations of books almost always come from books that weren't as good in the first place. The Godfather being a big exception. But
English Patient.
Yes, I mean sometimes it works, but a lot of times if the book is just too good on its own terms and it really fulfills your imagination, your fantasy, the movie doesn't live up to that. Some of this stuff would be awfully hard to do.
Does this change the nature of anything? Does it change the nature of children's books? Will children become reading a lot more? Will children's books become richer and more, as you use the term, fertile imagination of J.K. Rowling? I mean,
To the extent that children may read more, quite possibly, because children are already going into bookstores when they finish these books and asking for other books. Like it, and, you know, librarians and booksellers are standing by.
They just go.
You know, will somebody come along, you know.
It's like no, I know. You know. If you liked reading Harry Potter, you would also want to read these 5 other books.
That's right. But, you know, can somebody come along and replicate this? No, I don't think so.
This is really a one-of-a-kind thing, but it would be nice if this encourages publishers to take a flyer on smarter books for children and riskier books for children. Maybe that'll happen.
But unfortunately, it's probably going to just encourage them to try to knock it off.
Yeah, that'll be awful.
So we'll have a lot of
we'll have a lot of Harry Potter look-alike type books.
Wannabes.
You know, but a scar here and not on the
Right.
Now, you have kids, right? Mm-hmm. Do they like it?
Well, they like the first one. No. Well, no.
It's truthful, Mom.
There's something about saying Mom isn't going to talk to you all day Saturday because she's going to go read this 700-page book.
It's not a book they want to read.
Yeah.
That's if Mom likes it, we don't.
Yeah.
Is that about it?
Well, even they...
Some variation of that or
I
not?
have to admit it actually looks pretty good, but they haven't read it very much yet.
Okay. Let me just say, there is in this group, she's got 7 anticipated books, right?
That's right.
And she's finished 4 of them.
That's right.
I assume she's already halfway through 5.
She says 5, 6, and 7. She has parts written of all of them.
And then what after that? What does she do?
She says she has some plans. She doesn't know if they'll come to anything. The funniest thing she said was, you know, we were talking about the names that she creates for these people, and she says, you know, if I have to write books with, you know, characters named like Paul and Janet, I'm going to be very bored.
Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. J.K. Rowling is the author. It is one of the great big stories in publishing. My thanks to each of you.
Thank you.
We'll be back. Stay with us.